Hello everyone, artist Charles Wolfe here, back again for another painting lesson. This painting is on a larger canvas, 24 by 36 inches, but I'm going to start out today with a smaller canvas to show you the technique that I use to create some wonderful textures in this piece. I did it first, of course, on the larger canvas and decided to film this opening part after that because I realized that on the tape you couldn't quite see what I was doing, and in this case I wanted to be very clear with the technique utilized. First, I'm going to start with two colors, some Mars Black and some Phthalo Green. Those two colors are going to be the foundation of the texture for this piece. You can see that I have my canvas laid flat. That way I can move the paint around freely without causing any mess, hopefully. If the canvas were oriented vertically, it might start to slough down the flow of gravity, and we don't want that. Oops, knocked a little off there. Oh well. You can see that I'm just cutting in these swaths of lines in this paint, leaving it thicker in areas and thinner in others, using an old metal spatula. It's quite dirty and quite used and loved, and it works great to cut in some of these lines. The first technique I used is sort of a swirl, just kind of moving the paint around and getting it across a lot of the canvas. And then you'll see I kind of go back in and start cutting in some lines at various angles. I'm not really thinking about a direction with these. They should all be different direction, different angles. It should be fairly random. Some of them will all be in the same sort of direction, doing kind of a half sweep motion there. Some of them should be cutting across. I really like how this technique looks when you combine it with another technique, dry brushing. It really brings out the wonderful texture and the ridges formed by using all of this paint. The downside to this method is that it uses a lot of paint. Luckily, I'm using some fairly cheap acrylics here, and it won't cost me too much to do that. So if you have some cheaper acrylics that you don't really like or don't think that work that well, you can use them as a base, and then you can use your more pretty expensive acrylics on top of that. Here I have some more lines being cut in with this spatula using just the edge of it. Swirling here, cutting in there. Like I said, it needs to have a certain randomness to it. Trying to mess this up in an equal way as much as possible. The next step is to blow dry. Grab your hair dryer and wait about 20 minutes as you blow dry each section. And the actual big piece that I'll cut to in a moment, here it is. I did dry it off, but not thoroughly, and that's why I have a bit of green happening. The underpainting is yellow and blue and aqua, and that was actually a different composition, going to be a large desert canyon scene, and I didn't like the way it was looking. Use the technique with some phthalo green, I have a lot of that color. Use that for the underlayer texture. And then I started painting with the white paint on top of it, mixing with some of that still slightly wet phthalo green to get this beautiful aqua color. Using a large 2.5 inch brush, and I'm layering layers of paint onto my canvas. Thicker in areas, like you can see there, more white, just covering up the yellow portions and really focusing on the textures formed using the same method I showed you before. Okay, I'm bringing in some more of this mid-tone kind of mixture between the white and the phthalo green, forming an aqua. I'm really pressing the paint into the canvas in places, covering up the underlayer of the yellow and the blue. I don't want it too visible beneath the new layer. Very unified composition. I'm really exploring just two colors, white and this phthalo green, and that's going to be the counterpoint between them. That's going to be the focus of this composition. Bringing in some more of the white in the corners, lightening it up for contrast, blending between the two, trying to preserve the darker center, blend out the edges. Slightly off center. You don't want to put your main focal point right in the center. That doesn't usually look as good if you do that, so we want to make sure that we put it slightly off center and keep it that way. Like I said, this is a very large canvas, 24 by 36 inches, perfect size for a beautiful abstract. Really fills a wall nicely. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I currently have this hanging in my living room, and it looks great. Just blending here. You can see that it's picking up some of the ridge lines of the textured layers of acrylic underneath. I used the same palette knife to lay in the underlayers in this big painting as I just showed you on the smaller canvas. The same technique. And by using a dry brush technique on top of it, I'm able to really highlight those underlayers and that texture specifically. Sort of reminds me of maybe looking from a satellite view of the ocean waves crashing into an island maybe. It can be thought of as just purely an abstract, whatever you like. I don't know what it was, something about this piece reminded me of Seafoam, which is why I titled it that. Probably the color. It's kind of this kind of aqua-y, bluish green color that is quite light. And depending on the light, more of the yellow underpainting shows through, and that has more of a green effect, kind of goes almost an emerald. When it's cloudier, it has more of a bluish feel. It's kind of a cool color. It transitions because I have so much paint. It's very rich. Here I'm putting in some more of the phthalo green. Preserve that darker section like I said. Lots of paint freshly applied to my canvas. Really get it on that brush. Start blending light brush strokes here, kind of a dry brush here. Just softening and connecting. Back to my phthalo green, more of it over here. Some counterpoint to the larger mass of dark. Let that dry, and once that is mostly dry, we're going to come back, grab some more of the phthalo green, and I feel like as it's dried, it's become more homogeneous, so I want to have the different sections, the darker portion, be more contrasting to the lighter portions in the midtones. So we're going to put our darks back in, grabbing some more of the phthalo green. Really want this to be dark. And I think the combination of the colors, the shifting hues here from a darker mid-tone to the lighter areas, and then with the texture and that impact, it's very stunning in person. Lots more of the Phthalo Green. I had initially planned this all to be prep work, and I started painting and kind of got carried away, and suddenly, before I knew it, I had a complete piece. And it was just going to be a base layer for some other composition to paint on top of it. Oh, there's the piece. It's done. More Phthalo Green, really darkening it up. That looks a lot better. Using that darker paint to blend outwards, bring out some of those texture lines. Just blending here. Grabbing a mop brush and do the dry brush technique, put a little bit of white paint on the end of that, tap it out, get most of the paint off that brush, and very lightly, in the high spots, brush over some of the white, and it will pull out some of the texture and make it really sing. You have to use a very light hand though. Barely touch it to the canvas, just gently brushing past. May become a little bit dirty, that's okay. And we're going to use this white along the edges and in the center especially to contrast with the dark right behind it. Now we have to be careful. We don't want to lose that darker section. So we're not blending the two together, we're dry brushing. So it's a very delicate stroke, just brushing it over the high spots and not touching what's beneath. So there you can see I'm just gently starting to bring out some notes of contrast, and wherever we have high contrast, that's going to become our focal point. I'm going to further use this technique in a moment, bring in some more of the Phthalo Green using a dry brush on the outer edges where the midtone is. That's going to create more contrast and really pull those textures forward in a unique and beautiful way. A little more white. I find if you can keep it light and flowing, it gets a better result. Now I'm blending a little bit. Okay, here's the Phthalo Green with the big 2-inch brush, and we're going to dry brush this along the edges very lightly. Try to pick up some of those highlights and those high textures. A little bit more, and we'll call this painting done. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this painting process. Give it a try. It's a lot of fun. Create some great looking abstracts for your home. I'll be back soon with more paintings. Take care.